don't represent any of the groups. I'm a citizen. I am a neighbor of Overton Park.
Okay.
I have used the park since 1983.
Okay.
So, and I've used the park since about 1954. When you really get down to it, I can remember being in the zoo when I was about 6 years old. And so, the park is very important to me. It's very important to Memphis, and that's really why I'm here. Is this is an issue that is an issue for all Memphians, not just Midtowners, as some people have said. But I will say that mediation, I'm very hopeful, is going to solve this problem. Overton Park Conservancy has got some great people. I'm a member, but I'm not technically involved in any way. They've got a great legal team. And the zoo has appointed Richard Smith, Fred Smith's son, to act as its representative. So I'm very hopeful those folks are going to get together, come up with a solution, and all this will be moot. That would be the greatest thing. That said, I'm going to talk about some things that really do matter to me, and I'm going to say some things that probably might be a little controversial. First thing, I'm here because this is a very important issue. It's we've been told by the mayor and some representatives on the city council that essentially we're wasting the city's time over a small issue when there are bigger issues to be resolved. And certainly there are. I mean, you've got huge issues with the police force. And by the way, I certainly appreciate the police force. I've been a victim of violent crime myself. And let me tell you, if you ever are, you're going to be awfully glad that there's somebody there to take care of you.
Exactly.
And but that said, frankly, if we can't solve a problem that's this obvious, how are we going to solve the big
problems?
How are we going to make sure that the young men of our community have an opportunity, to grow and grow up without having a criminal record and grow up and have good jobs? If we can't even solve something so obvious, for God's sake, we're parking cars on the most important public space in our most important park in our city. Yes. And not only in our city, it's one of the most important parks in the United States. And we're parking cars there. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And so, it's really important as a city that we've learned to figure out how to work at these things together as opposed to,
always button heads.
Always button heads.
Controversial.
And it's really, what type of city do we want to be? I mean, I've been committed throughout my life to trying to make Memphis a better place than it is. And I've worked I was a secretary of the Chamber of Commerce at one time. So I've worked on economic development. I've worked on all these things. What matters the most right now is how are we going to make Memphis the type of city that attracts the best jobs, attracts the bright young people, and provides, by doing so, provides better opportunities for all the people that are here.
And while you say that, I will tell you that a lot of I've been meeting a lot of what they call millennials. And I will tell you that Overton Park and places like that are very important to millennials.
Absolutely.
To the young people that we're trying to attract to this city.
Well, I've got two children. They're a little older than millennials, but they're still here in Memphis. And all their friends are moving to Nashville or Brooklyn or wherever. And I don't want my children to move. I want this to be the sort of place they want to stay and raise their children. And so the other thing is, this is an issue that's getting national attention now. It's already been out there in the national press. I suspect it's going to get more national press. Memphis and Overton Park is going to get a lot of press here in the next month or so. Overton Park is being featured in an NPR documentary on the 10 parks that changed America.
Really?
And do we want to be featured nationally as one of the 10 parks that changed America, only to find that, but it wasn't that important to us. We decided we were going to destroy it. Not good. Good. And frankly, this is not the first time we fought this battle.
No.
So back when I was, I remember this vividly. I went to law school back in the 1970s. A friend of mine was actually trying to save a very important place. He lived in Thomas Jefferson's boyhood home in Richmond, Virginia, and they were trying to run an expressway right there. Well, Memphis had fought this battle. Charlie Newman, who's an attorney here, led the charge, went to the United States Supreme Court, and we, as a community, were ready to run an expressway right down the middle of Overton Park. That's what the city of Memphis wanted to do.
Correct.
And some local citizens, so not unlike what's going on today, what they call little old ladies in tennis shoes, just got together and said, we're not going to let this happen. And they decided to fight it. They fought it for years and years and years, eventually getting to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court finally made a decision that you can't run an expressway through a park without determining that there is no other feasible alternative.
Yes.
And I think that same rule ought to apply here. You shouldn't be parking on the Greensward without figuring out, is there any other solution to this parking problem? And we do have a parking problem. I mean, Overton Park, a lot of this issue is both the zoo and the rest of Overton Park has gotten more and more popular.
Yes.
I'm sure you and most of your listeners have had an opportunity to go to the Shell and hear some of those great concerts.
Yes.
And, boy, if there's ever a parking problem, just go to one of those Shell concerts and you'll see it in spades.
And those concerts are normally free.
And they're free.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, people are willing to walk pretty far.
Yes.
To those concerts.
Yes, I've been to several.
Yeah. And but it is, this is an issue. Well, the same battle has been fought, after we won in the 70s. Overton Park actually fell into some hard times. I think you mentioned, I can remember the 60s, we had the hippies out there, the 70s, man, we had the whole community out there.
I know. Before I left to go to the military, I was a senior, I was in high school, but that's where all of the young people would go on the weekends, was to Overton Park.
Absolutely.
We'd go out there and sit in the grass and just kind of hang out and do our thing.
Okay, the cars would cruise through the park.
Exactly.
And it was pretty amazing. I mean, that Greensward was just basically covered with people back then. I can remember it vividly. And so, but then, the park sort of fell into disrepair, and it had some problems. I mean, the park was a little bit of a scary place. I mean, I started, as soon as I moved into the area, I started jogging through the area, and I'd jog through there, and, the roads were all open then, so I'd have to dodge cars. And I got up one morning, went jogging, and noticed blue lights and wondered what's going on. And so I'm jogging by, I look over, and I see this chalk mark around a body.
No.
Yeah. No. So, and that's part of the problem. I think there's still people in this community who have the perception that Overton Park's dangerous, which it has been at times. It's not anymore. I go over there all the time. It's a place for families.
Yes.
Not to say that you can go anywhere in the city of Memphis, that something couldn't happen to you, but I think, Overton Park is safe. It doesn't have some of the issues that it used to have in the past.
Okay.
And certainly if anybody's listening to this and doubts that, just come on out there on a pretty weekend. You'll see.
Yes.
And so it's a place for families. But we've continued to fight the battle. Even again, we in the 80s, the zoo was actually bankrupt. I mean, the city of Memphis was spending at that time what seemed like a lot of money, $1,200,000 a year trying to support the zoo, and they formed the Memphis Zoological Society to take charge of it, invest a lot of money, create what they felt would be, and I think is, a world-class zoo in Overton Park. And but even that caused issues. In 1986, the zoo developed a plan, and this is sort of famous because this gets into the city council issue, that was going to basically take that whole Greensward, put the Rainbow Lake, which is that lake you mentioned, inside the zoo, run a highway down what's now Veterans Plaza. So instead of honoring the veterans, we'd have been running cars over them. And that, of course, as you can imagine, the neighbors got pretty upset about that.
Yes.
So, that was worked out. And that plan was never adopted, by the way.
Okay.
And then by 1989, when the Zoological Society and the city entered into an agreement, that had been worked out. And there were, in fact, that agreement said, and the city council and the mayor approved it, that, parking would not be allowed on the Greensward.
Okay.
And, in fact, they were required to, that little wood fence that's there along their parking lot?
Yes.
Well, they were required to build that to keep cars from getting out on it.
All right, listen, before we eat, I have something very important to say, okay?